Okay. At 10:01:39, consider yourselves in session for this workshop. And you go to the public hearing.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor and Council, we can ask Drew to present on this item. This is one of the steps required for annexation. No action, just 2 public hearings, and then action comes later. P&Z has already heard this item. This also came to you just as an introduction item a few weeks back, and now it's back to you for the first public hearing. So I'll let Drew present.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. This is a public hearing for the annexation of the KISD middle school property. It is within the Catalyst area around the high school and Loop 534. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended public and institutional zoning, which would allow elementary or secondary, or primary or secondary school as a by right use. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay. So is that the direction we're going?
Yeah, we just need to see if there's any public comment.
Okay, right. Do we have any public comments on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing.
We'll have a second public hearing on the April 23rd meeting. Also no action. First reading with public hearing on May 14th and second reading on May 28th. Thank you.
Have we had, just a quick question, any comments from anybody, any neighbors, anybody?
No, the notification area, I think hit 1, maybe 2 property owners that are Shriner City or KISD. And that's across the loop, just north of the high school. So,
One other question, when will we be doing the road? That'll be after this process? As far as Olympic Drive, it's actually going to be on your next regular meeting. Okay, on the 23rd. So that's not part of this?
Not part of this process,
You're
right?
going to have the funding agreement with the IC. You're going to have the development agreement with KISD. You're going to have the engineering contract. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We go to information discussion on the festivals, tourism events.
Okay, so Ashley's going to make this presentation. We sent this out yesterday. No action, just an update on what's happening, and you all had a discussion around this at your work session you had with Peterson, and I know that Councilman Belcher and others have had some interest in pushing out more tourist events. So this is a time to discuss that after Ashley presents. So, Ashley.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me this morning. I did provide you an updated handout at your places. I had to take some of the numbers that were off in last night's presentation that went out. I'm sorry about that. But you do have the updated version here. So I'm going to first cover some of our summer activities and then get into the events later at the end. So if you'll flip to the third slide, the aquatics page. Our pool is a summer operational facility, as you know. We operate Memorial Day weekend. We'll open that weekend, and then we'll be open through mid-August. And we'll actually close the week between Memorial Day and the first week of June, strictly because of availability of lifeguards. And school is still in session, so we didn't really see a high rise in attendance last year. We tried that, but we will be open Memorial Day weekend and for that holiday. We're open every day except for Mondays. We're closed for maintenance. And admission is $1 for ages 4 and up. And last summer we had 13,867 people attend the Olympic pool last year.
Which was a record, right, Ashley?
It is. And if you flip over to the next slide that says annual pool attendance, this shows the annual attendance back from 2008 to 2018. And it's important to note that this is not the revenue, this is the actual attendance. So this is people that we count that get in for free, such as swim lessons, lap swim, theater swim, memberships, that's all included. So I put on here at the bottom the admission fees, if you know, in blue. Those were the years the admission fee was $2. And in purple, it switched to $3, the increase. You can see the decline in attendance there. And then in the green, we dropped it back down to $1, and our attendance significantly increased. And last year was the highest year we've seen for attendance at the pool to date.
Ashley,
What do you
let me
charge?
advance the slides for you so that
Sorry, thank you.
What do you charge for swim lessons?
Swim lessons are $45. And for 2 weeks, private lessons are $100 for those. Thank you, Stuart. Okay, so the annual comparison by month, this shows you the usage based on the month. We see a trend. Typically, June is
slide
our
are you on?
highest month.
What slide are you on? 6?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
June is our highest attendance, followed by July. And then August, it's lower, but that's because we're not open for the entire month. We're only open for a couple of weeks at best. And there are some years that we're not even open in August. So those are the numbers there. Okay, so next slide, the total attendance by month. Again, May is the lowest because we just kind of started opening in May. And this is for the total of since 2008. We have all of the years combined here. So that's a total attendance for several years now, with June being our most popular month. July and August start to wind down. We see families going back to school. We see kids going back to school. We see them going to college, the last minute family vacations. So that's the kind of the trend in August that we see. Okay, we just finished wrapping up a couple of lifeguard training for our summer seasonal employees. We hire about 25 lifeguards. We utilize Jeff Ellis Associates Lifeguard Risk Management Corporation, and we pay our lifeguards $10 an hour, and this was increased a couple of years ago to entice folks to apply. This is actually the first summer in several years we haven't had an issue with folks applying. We have plenty of lifeguards this year. As long as everybody stays committed, we'll be good to go for the opening season.
So what is the hourly?
Starting at $10, and it goes up a quarter for every year you come back up to 4 years. And that's the lifeguard pay. Managers make more than that.
If the lifeguard was paid slightly more, would it make a difference on the together?
Well, right now we're seeing that $10 is actually sufficient with attracting them. But if we do see a decline, we would look at raising the rates again. But right now we're doing okay.
You're getting enough lifeguards.
Yes, I'm proud to say this summer we are.
Is the $10 competitive?
It is. We pay more in this region than anybody else does.
We get a lot of competition with camps, the local camps,
Yes.
and so we did have to raise our rates, I guess 2 years ago, and then kind of put a plan in place for them to be able to, if they're returning folks, which is what we really want, so we're not having to retrain every year, we can maintain competitiveness. And so right now, she's done a great job with recruiting, and so we're going into the summer much better than we were 2 years ago.
I used to have to pay mine more than that, so I'm surprised.
Yeah.
That's good.
We're doing well so far. Okay, in the swim lessons, we offer 3 different types of swim lessons. We offer group lessons, we offer private lessons, and then semi-private lessons. Last year we had an 87% enrollment capacity for group lessons, and our private swim lessons is something we started a couple of years ago, and it's continuing to increase, and it increased 93% from the year before. And we offer swim lessons starting at ages 6 months old. Okay, next program that we do for aquatics is our junior lifeguard camp. This is something that we started last year, and we're going to continue to offer it this year and continue to grow it. It's basically for ages about 10 to 14, so we're trying to capture that age that comes to the pool that's interested in aquatics and to get them kind of pre-trained for lifeguards. So we start hiring lifeguards at age 15, and so the goal is to get them in there, get them interested, and then once they're of age, they can come back and train and work for us. We do offer adult lap swim in the morning, and we offer water aerobics for seniors. And new last year, we started a couple of promotional days that we're doing. We've expanded that this year. We're doing some family swim nights, and we'll also do a movie at the pool, which I'll talk about later, which is going to be exciting. We'll switch to your next slide. Okay, and just a fun fact, we are doing this program again this year. Our competitive lifeguard team, it's been very successful. We've won the state competition for the past 4 out of 5 competing years, and we had 2 teams for the first time last year. So we're going to strive for that again this year and continue our history of excellence in our training. Our lifeguards here are the best trained lifeguards in the state of Texas, so that's something that we're very proud of. Next. Okay, next I'm going to get into are where we are at in our aquatics feasibility study. As you know, we've held several public meetings, we've gained input. Our consultants have conducted a forensic analysis of the pool, and those are some pictures of the scanner that they used. They scanned the entire pool, and essentially the initial results coming back are the pool shell is in great condition. We know the pool needs to be replastered. If you'll switch to the next slide, that's an aerial of the pool. And I highlighted there some of the areas, the bubbles you'll see from the plaster. But the plaster is very old. It hasn't been replastered in 10 plus years, so it's time. And we'll go to the next page.
Hold on one second. So you said the shell is in great condition?
Yeah.
Meaning absolutely nothing wrong with it? Or-
The substructure underneath the plaster is in pretty good shape. It's 50 years old, but what we found within the radar analysis was that it's strong.
I guess all our leak problems with it has nothing to do with the shell, it has to do with the plaster.
It has to do with both. And I'll get into that crack in just a second. So again, pool needs to be replastered. The results that we have received are preliminary. We have not received a report yet, but that should be coming very soon, so we'll have a better idea of what that looks like. On the next page, you can see highlighted here is the crack in the deep end. It's circled, and that is a close-up of the crack itself. That's exposed into the concrete, so that's into the layers of plasters. There's about 3 different layers of plasters that we found, and that's the crack that's actually in the concrete itself. So we are losing a little bit of water there, but we did go back and repatch this a couple of years ago, which seemed to help significantly. So, next slide is what we did. Obviously, we drained the pool for this the last couple of weeks, and we conducted the forensic scan. And then in the meantime, we identified several areas in the plaster which had blister problems. What it does is it bubbles up and then creates a void, and then it essentially breaks and it exposes. So staff went in and repaired about 25 of those blisters in the plaster, the major significant ones that we fixed. And then we also went ahead and addressed a very temporary fix for the crack itself. We went in and we kind of busted it out. We put hydraulic cement in there, and then we sealed it to get us through this season until we're able to address it on a large scale. Okay, so next steps, if you'll switch your page, we will receive our forensic study results and take a look at that. We are working with our consultants based on preliminary kind of project costs and preliminary concept selections from the community on what kind of project can we do within our budget. Preliminarily, what we've told our consultants is give us something that we can work with, that we can afford, give us something that we can phase potentially, possibly start with some recreational components like you see in the top picture. This was option 3, that was the 3rd most popular selection from the community. And this essentially will fix all of the maintenance issues, all of the code issues. We know the pump room equipment needs to be updated. Pump room's holding on right now by duct tape and bubble gum. It needs to be updated, it needs to be fixed. It'll fix all the ADA compliance and all the building and maintenance issues. And then if we can potentially add some recreational components as well. And then in the future, potentially the ability to phase in an natatorium and additional recreational features. But again, that all comes down to funding and budget, and that's what we're working with our consultants on right now.
Are we expecting on losing any softball fields? That one, I guess, on the corner of Olympic and Senior Wing?
Maybe. So the softball fields, we have 3 in Singing Park, and they're very underutilized at this point, especially with the addition of the sports complex. So my thoughts on that is we definitely have the opportunity for repurposing of that land for other purposes, and this could be one of them. It's not a guarantee at this point, but it's an option. My recommendation would be to keep at least one of the fields, field 1 by the playground, and open up field 2 and field 3, which are very underutilized. Field 2 needs some issues. It's dropping, it needs to be lifted. You know, there's lights need to be replaced. There's a significant amount of work that needs to go back into those fields to bring them up to playability, which it's not being used for. So after we get our recommendation back with our consultants, we'll again go back to the public. We'll hold another public input meeting. We'll do another online survey. And then our goal is, in the meantime, to try to replaster this pool in this season, this fiscal year, at the end of the summer.
Go back to one question with the fields that we talked about.
Sure.
Didn't EIC set aside like $750,000 for Senior Wings upgrade like a couple of 3 years ago?
They did, and that would be for the entire park.
Did it get used?
No.
Okay. Geez.
I don't know that there's any funding agreement that was ever.
There was never an agreement, it was an allocation. They had set it aside.
Yeah, it may have been allocated within the budget, but it's since been reallocated because it's not currently within their existing budgets that way.
What does a replaster run cost-wise?
So that's looking at about 125 to 130,000 for that. So we will do the formal bidding process for that coming up here in the next couple of months. Okay.
That'll cut, the replaster would come without the fix of that concrete.
Yeah, that is strictly just replastering the pool. Kerrville Sports Complex activities. You'll see here a couple of aerial photos of the facility in use. We have scheduled a photographer to come back at the end of this month in anticipation of very high use weekends. So we're trying to capture those photos and be able to tell these good news stories and see the complex in use. So we'll get some updated photos. For soccer, we have several different organizations that play there. We have the local youth organizations, which is HCYSA and ASO United and Crush. Their fall season, they had 87 teams. In December, we held a 50-team tournament out of San Antonio. It was an ASA girls D2 and 3 soccer division tournament. They're also looking to come back and use our facility as their home facility for their tournament. So that's something that we're working with them on. Spring season, we had 68 teams between the local youth organizations, our summer Parks and Rec adult soccer leagues play at the complex in the summer, and also the Notre Dame Catholic School and Our Ladies of the Hills Catholic High School utilize the soccer fields for their home games as well. We also have received some interest on starting a rugby league. In addition to Manchester School of Soccer is interested in utilizing the complex to complement the local youth organizations and to run tournaments and camps and at the complex. So we're working with them on that. So it's seeing increased use. Okay, baseball, softball activity. Tournament data, 2018 held 593 total teams. The percentages breakdown is 56% for softball, 44% were baseball. In 2019, to date, as of last weekend, 243 tournament teams have been held, and DBAT's goal is to have at least 1,000 teams this calendar year.
Okay, so, and that was one of my questions. So these 2018 numbers and 2019 numbers are really fiscal years numbers, are they not?
No, it's actually a partial year because 2018, remember, they didn't really open the complex until the March time frame.
Right.
So it's really just a partial year.
The 2019, that count is beginning in our fiscal year, right?
That's calendar year.
It's calendar year.
These are calendar year.
So since January, it's 243.
Yep.
That's correct.
Last fall, we were getting told the number was 700 and something for 2018. What was that?
No, there's a total of approximately 600 for the entirety of the calendar year 2018.
Okay, could you send to council that list similar to what we've done before, where you just give us the breakdown of what these were?
Sure.
Thanks.
Fiscal year or calendar year?
Just since open.
Since
You know,
open.
because you gave us monthly.
Or actually, you gave us tournaments. I assume you still have that, so it would just be like,
Whatever you've got.
Okay. Yeah, we track it a couple different ways. We track it fiscal year and calendar year, but we'll send you what we have. We track it. Okay. All right, any questions on sports complex? Okay, so they're rocking and rolling. Special events.
Oh, sorry, I had one question on sports complex.
Sure.
A comment and a question. I've done a few umpire games out there, and I think the baseball fields are in much better condition this year. But one of the main complaints I continue to hear is the upper pod. We removed some pitching mounds. We have these rollaway mounds out there. They're kind of, some of them, we have some really tall kids for that age. They're short, so they're kind of rolling their ankles and stepping off the mound. Is there a way we can get a longer mound, or maybe replace the dirt mounds?
Yeah,
Or explain us the decision that was made, because they did it on the big fields too now.
Yeah.
So
the pitching mounds for the Little League, is there just small minority of people that are having issues? That's been my
It
understanding.
seems like every team that has played, difficulty leveling it out to start the game, and then once the kids start pitching, some of them kind of fall off the mountain. Like, and then most of them are really taller kids.
Okay, I'll have to investigate that with DBAT and research it. The only thing that I've heard so far is it's been one child that's been a very tall child for their age, and that's the only information I've received so far based on that issue. But if we're having multiple children, then I can research and address the issue.
Okay, that'd be great. Well, what was the reason behind shaving away the mounds and using these?
So DBAT's reasoning for using the mounds is to be able to basically multi-purpose type use, so they can have more play on more of the fields. They're actually looking to do that in some of their other fields as well. They can have more different types of games on different types of fields to be able to utilize.
Size diamonds,
Yeah.
right? And so, are we going to be cutting away the infield too? Because the fields that had the mounds that we now have temporarily on, their base pass would be on the outfield grass. So, what are they? I mean, are we going to cut away grass too?
It's something we're evaluating. There hasn't been a decision made on it. We're trying to maximize flexibility to maximize the tournaments that can be scheduled.
What about fence movement too? The fences weren't built deep enough for the bigger field.
It could. We're looking at all options to maximize flexibility to maximize tournaments.
And the high school size fields, what was the reasoning behind shaving those off?
I think that was for senior softball. Could be wrong. I'll have to look into that. Okay, special events. We have our Movies in the Park series that we're doing that has expanded. We are also doing, like I said, the movie at the pool this year. We'll allow free admission at the pool. You'll come in and you can use floaties. We're actually going to provide some clear flotation tubes for people to hang out in the pool and to watch a movie. So that should be fun. And this is again a free event, and they're covered 100% by sponsorships for this series. Our next big event is our Get Outdoors Day in June, and this includes a 5K run as of last year with Pipe and Plow and Basement Breweries. We have a bunch of outdoor activities to encourage people to get outside, get away from their electronics, go back to traditional play. We have bubble soccer, we have dunk tanks. I think if you look closely, you can recognize somebody in that tank. Councilmember Rudy Buckle and I have all been in there in the past couple of years. I appreciate y'all's efforts.
You don't have to wear socks.
Okay.
And so we have a bunch of scheduled activities, and then we have several. If you see the picture with the tennis racket, we have a bunch of passive recreational activities. We just set out horseshoes, the parachutes, and encourage people to pick up toys and to play with them. We have animal education. That's a snake in the bottom right corner. You switch the slide. We have bounce castles and activities. We even have yoga and exercise programs. And then this year, Shakespeare in the Park is tagging on to complete the evening for their Shakespeare in the Park event too, which is going to be, I think, a good complement. We'll have a full day's worth of activities, starting with the run in the morning, our activities, and then we'll have Shakespeare in the Park that night. Again, free admission, 3 to 10. Okay. Next, we have our Kerrville skateboard competition held in June. This is one of our smaller events, but it's popular for the special interest group that uses the skate park. It's free admission, it's free to attend, ages 5 to 18. And those that actually place and qualify can actually move up and compete in the state level, regional and state level tournaments for TAF, which is Texas Amateur Athletic Federation. We have our Kids Try and our Wet and Wag, which is held at the end of August, the same day, the last day the pool's open. We have the Kids Try in the morning. We have about 70 kids that attend that. And then the Wet and Wag, we saw our highest number of doggies last year. We had about 35 or so. Again, free event. That's a free event. Kids Try is a minimal fee, and we have reduced rates for families with multiple children. Next is our Kerrville River Roaster Show. We tried this last year but got rained out, so we're trying it again this year. We're holding it in September. It's essentially a car show in the park with food and music. And then we also have our Concerts by the River event series, which is completely funded by these sponsorships here. We expanded from 2 last year to 5 this year, and they're all held at Louise Hayes Park. Small local bands. We have the Festival of the Art. This is not actually produced by the city, but it does receive hot funds from the city, and it also receives in-kind support. And this is one of the major festivals that brings in tourists from out of town. This is the 5th annual event. Last year had 128 participants. Estimated attendance was about 6,500. And the Kerrville CVB estimates the economic impact was around $750,000 for this event called Memorial Day weekend. Have y'all been to this one? No one? Yeah, it's a very, very high quality, well-run event downtown. The next one is the July 4th event, Robert Earl Keene's on the River. Again, not our event, but one that we help support through funding and services. Estimate between 5,000 and 7,000. It's hot funded. The fireworks are produced by the city. We did ask the CVB for economic impact numbers, but they said they don't have those. They don't really track it for this event since it's not fee-based. Kerrville Triathlon Festival, 8 years here in Kerrville. Last year we had about 1,400 athletes, 63 are from Kerrville, 21 from Fredericksburg. The split between male and female is about roughly even. 100 children participated in the fun run. It's also hot funded, and this economic impact estimate, according to the CVB, is between $850,000 to $1 million for this event.
Kind of along those lines, we never talked about it, but it's this weekend, but there's an annual, they've been doing for 40 some years, bike ride that's with the hill country, whatever it is. And it's like, I'm Googling it now because I was wondering what the number was. It's like 1,000 cyclists. We don't advertise it here. If we could maybe look at, piggybacking on it, we don't have to run it, it's here. So, anyways,
Sure, yeah.
It's this weekend.
Yeah, there's lots of other events. These are kind of the major ones that I've included that the city is somewhat included in, but we're always happy to tell good news stories for the community, so we can include stuff like that.
It's pretty major.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Okay, Kerrville Chalk Festival. This one is held in October in Peterson Plaza. Last year they had about 65 large-scale chalk murals, and then some of the smaller scale artists. They estimate 10,000 people attended, and each year they have a different benefactor that receives funds from their fundraising efforts. Okay, and the next event is ours. This is something that's new and something that I'd like to talk to you about today to get your consensus and general direction for this event. This is the Kerrville River Festival. We've talked to you about this a little bit in the past, and our event scope is to do a half-a-day concert with one headliner and some opening bands in September, have free admission, and estimate roughly 3,000 to 5,000 in attendance. So, for a budget of that scale, to get a some sort of semi-known, low-level artist, that event is going to cost about $50,000 turnkey. For a mid-level artist, and those type of names would be somebody like, Robert Earl Keene, for example, July 4th event. If you're looking in comparison, that event costs about $100,000. This type of artist would be Pat Green, Thompson Square, Eli Young, Diamond Rio, some of the higher known bands. You're looking at a $75,000 to $100,000 event. That's not something that I think we're ready to recommend at this point based on funding and scope and time. But if we're looking at doing something that's a little bit lower level, around the $50,000 mark, those type of people, headliners, you're looking at Kevin Fowler, Kyle Park, David Lee Murphy, Roger Krager, William Clark Green type artist level. We're working with a few different promoters. We're trying to work on budget and scope. We've spoken with 3 different ones so far, and we've told them, hey, if we have about a $20,000 budget, what kind of event can they get us? And they basically told us, you won't get any headliners. Your headliner is going to cost that in itself, in a sense. So if you wanted to do an event like that, you need to just strictly keep it local, because the expense is the headliner, and then all of the things that come with it, the stage, the sound, the lights, logistics, the porta potties, the security, all of that, the power, all of that stuff, it adds up and it gets very expensive. So what I would like for discussion and consideration from the council is what type of scope would you like to see, and are you comfortable with committing a level of hot funds to get towards this event? Just
Vincent, you've looked at this a lot. What,
I'd like to see the mid-level or higher than that, but I don't know funding-wise what we have in the hot fund or anything left over after what we can use. But yeah, I would definitely like to see $100,000. I think we can handle that in the city of Kerrville. Obviously, we can with Forces and all that, as far as hotels and motels and things like that. I think it'd be another big boost for our downtown to have something that close to it. So I would go for the mid-level.
I would ask, what's the goal? Like, because to me that determines what you're willing to spend and do. So if we're trying to design an event that's like July 4th where it's mostly Kerrville, then that's one set of parameters. If we're trying to make it a true destination event, then it's a different set of parameters. So I would ask, what are you trying to create?
Well, this is based off of feedback that we received from the council at the workshop that you guys had earlier this calendar year. And what we heard you all say was that you wanted to create an event that would draw in not just from a local base, but from a regional base. And so that's why you were willing to potentially commit some hot funds to it. And so based off that, she went back with her team and garnered some research of, kind of what the scale of what that would cost. And so now we're coming back to you guys to get confirmation of what those costs are, what that looks like, and really just confirming with you all that, what the level might be appropriate from a hot standpoint, because you get into a little bit of a chicken and egg as far as signing contracts and sponsorships and which comes first.
I think if we're gonna do what we were talking about before, that you don't go on the cheap to do it because you won't succeed. So in my mind, if we're trying to create an annual event, that costs money. And if we're committed to doing that, then we should do it. If we're not, then we shouldn't do any of it. I mean, I think mid-level is probably just throwing money away because you're not going to get the draw that you're looking for. And yeah, you're going to spend a lot of money. And if we're going to try and create a real buzz and a real event, we should do it the right way. And that's kind of my feeling about it. And I don't think it should all come from hot. I mean, obviously, to do an event like that, it takes a serious amount of sponsorship money, and we'd be having to go after that. But that's just me.
So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, as Ian mentioned. So if we're not able to raise the sponsorships, then we're too far into it. So we gotta know that we've got a commitment of funding. The mid-level, as has been mentioned, is more like a rubber little king. So that is a big draw that you can expect to see over time as it grows if you do it annually, 3,000 to 5,000 attendance. So that's kind of that would be our recommendation on the higher end. Otherwise, we're looking at more of a local level artist in 50,000. So, but to go up another step beyond the mid-level, we're talking about probably double the money.
you're talking about what?
Double. 200,000, 180, 200,000.
Great.
And
You too.
and can we get the artists that we want at this point in time for September?
That's part of the chicken and egg type scenario. Is our promoters will not work with us until they have a contract signed with us, and they can't do that unless we know what our budget is. So we're kind of working around. I'm trying to get as much information from promoters as I can to develop some sort of budget and scope to go back and to get direction from council in order to sign a contract. The promoters typically take about 10 to 20%, and they really won't work with us on, like I said, information until we know what our budget is.
And see, that's what I would say, keep working towards next year. Do something this year that's not in this type of scope because we're late in the game to get there. And I would suggest doing the best you can with what you thought you had, which I guess was 20,000 or something like that, and produce an event and learn from the timing of what you've worked on so far and build up to what we want for next year. So you do it right instead of, kind of halfway.
Which would mean basically local bands.
Correct.
Right.
We're doing already.
To me, that is worth doing. Going to September for local bands, seeing the general response and what we could do if we go above that. Do we think that will draw enough of a crowd?
As long as it's free, and in this case, that's what we're talking about. So it's underwritten by sponsorships and
I think it would draw if you got 3, 4 local bands, and it's free, and it's out of the river.
It would probably be a proportionate draw to what you invested, and that's kind of what I'm suggesting. So basically, in this short amount of time, we're probably not going to create a big draw event. So rather than halfway try, we should do what we can to make an equivalent one and learn from the lateness in which we got involved and look toward next year as far as, in the budget cycle even, you can come up with a budget for an event that's essentially going to happen the following year.
Is the 7th Labor Day weekend? Or it's after?
Yeah, right after.
I'm curious, did any of the promoters mention the Los Lonely Boys band?
No? If that helps, I could ask him.
They're really good. They're from San Angelo. Okay, what was the festival you went to in Silver Park?
Blues on the Green.
Blues.
Which is a suggestion that, not Blues on the Green, but that's put on by what used to be KGSR, but ACL Radio. And a thought of mine was to somehow, we can get that radio station on here in Kerrville. And this whole satellite of Austin thing, you could probably get them as a legitimate sponsor as far as calling this a Blues on the Green satellite. Similar to how they do South by Southwest satellite, just things outside of Austin. It's just an idea.
My concern about that would be not using either of the local combination radio stations.
Oh, they'd be part of it. I mean, it's all part of it. But at the end of the day, what you're looking for is a coalition of stuff, because sponsorship's not going to come from one spot.
Right. I was just going to say that you can go either way, but Justin at the jam radios, he is so about community, getting out there. But of course, does that ranch radio and all of them are going to be Saturday at Flat Rock Park. So, okay, thank you.
So I think what we were looking for today was the direction of confirmation of keeping this at the lower level $5,000 budget, or are we committing, up to a certain amount of hot funds that we can feel confident in signing a contract with an artist on?
Well, my recommendation would be that you look at as y'all have indicated, the local level. So we're talking about $50,000 budget and commit $25,000, up to $25,000 per month. Try to get sponsors for the rest.
I don't think that's what I was suggesting, but that may be what he was suggesting. I was suggesting that that's actually more than I think we should do based on the timing of what we're trying to do. And I'm not sure what he was saying.
I think the issue is, do you lowball it and get local bands and get folks there, or do we have to go to 50,000 for local bands?
Well, I think what they're saying is that we get a draw similar to the July 4th, which generally speaking is local.
No. So the mid-level is the 75 to 100. That's the mid-level arms.
When I say local, I mean draw.
The 50,000 would be the local level. 50,000 to 25,000.
Okay, but wait, we're not talking about getting the same draw as Robert Earl King's
No.
in Louisiana's Park. All right, but what you're saying is, if we go 50,000, half of that from Hot, with local artists, we can do it. Do it adequately.
So it's more than just local. There'll probably be two or three bands in addition to, you can read that list again of kind of that,
Still the half day event.
Yeah,
still a
so,
half day event. Go ahead and read that
sorry.
one.
So I'm calling this kind of the lower level type artists that are still somewhat known. This would be your Kevin Fowlers, your Kyle Parks, David Lee Murphy, Whiskey Myers, William Clark Green, Roger Krager type quality.
So that would be the headliner in addition to some local bands that would be.
How did Krager do at Shriner the other night? How did Krager, did he pull?
Not as well as I was hoping.
About 80 or so tickets I've heard. 80 is what I'm hearing. Heard it was smaller than what they anticipated.
How much of the college students didn't go into the paid area, they just sat in their dorms and watched, which is pretty convenient. College campus.
Okay, now when are we gonna take action on this?
I'm doing the low level.
Consensus, we can do it.
I like the low level as long as we understand, my understanding would be that we're building on this, continuing to go, hopefully year after year.
So low level again would be one semi-headliner and 3 or 4 local bands.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
Okay, and we're looking at 50,000.
25.
20, well,
Five. Hot.
I feel like
25,
this
25.
gives the city council time enough to put our band together.
I've got a video of it.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, so anything else, Ashley?
I think that's it.
And
Okay, I got-
you're comfortable with that? You would be comfortable?
Yes. Yeah, I think we'll try to have to be a little bit creative as far as raising the other 25, if that's going to be strictly sponsorships. We have 5,000 raised. City typically doesn't do well with raising sponsors, so we may need some help with that. I know Vincent or Councilman Vocal was looking at helping this raise. I'm sorry, that was impolite. Looking at helping us raise some sponsorships for that, so that would be my only concern. Okay. We've not have seen high support in the past. So.
It becomes a lot easier once we've nailed the contract and we can actually say who the artist is. So this was an important piece today to be able to get that.
Okay, Ashley, before you go, I got 2 questions for you. Given all that Parks and Recreation is doing, what is your greatest challenge right now?
Time and resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your greatest fulfillment right now in terms of what Parks and Recreation
What
is
we
doing?
do, being able to serve. We've really grown our department in the past couple of years on our services, and that's something that we're very proud of. So I would say our service and our quality.
You know, Mayor, I think back to 2008, and I think in 2008 when we actually had some layoffs and some changes, Ashley was out there at times with a weed eater. She'd probably like to get back on that.
Stress relief.
Right.
She's put a great team together.
Come along.
Executive position's not all it's wrapped up in.
No, it's the, and other duties as assigned.
I've got a few questions also, Mayor.
Okay.
You didn't tell us what movie you're going to be playing. Full, I was hoping maybe
We're showing Hotel Transylvania 3.
Okay.
So something aquatic themed, we're on a cruise. So.
Awesome.
I have shown Jaws
Oh,
in
yeah.
previous cities. I'm not sure if that's something the council would approve of, but
Megalodon just came out.
you can look at that.
And are we doing scuba training at all in the pool? Does anybody
No,
offer that here locally?
we would love to do that. If there's anybody that's interested, we would love to do partner with them and do some sort of agreement for any of those kind of services. So that's continuing to grow for us as well as these little instructor contracts. So we're happy to expand services with.
Maybe after movies in the park season's kind of over, maybe you can work with the farmer's market and having a movie once or twice at the Shriner Mansion. Whenever the time changes, if you start it a little bit earlier. You know, I saw Camp Eagles in the park the other day. Did we have anything to do with that? We just offer them a space.
Camp Gladiator?
No, it had all the
Camp
rock walls. Is it Eagle Ridge?
Yeah, they have the climbing wall.
So it was a special event. and it was permitted through our office. So that's something that we do as well for people that want to host their own events in the parks. They get vetted through the process, and then they can host their own events.
Okay, that was pretty neat to see, and I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah,
And
and we encourage.
a gentleman came by before the meeting and passed these out for a solar eclipse. He just kind of wanted to make us aware of that for Kerrville to plan, because I think within 6 months, we get hit twice with a solar eclipse, and there's, I don't know if y'all were aware of the last one, but a lot of cities kind of got overcrowded. We might want to plan for that.
I was in Wyoming, driving through Wyoming with the last big one, and there were folks, I heard this just in my breakfast time there, that they were renting out their front yards for $1,000. Camping.
We were in Nebraska for it, they did that up there too.
So
Rented out farms for it.
I'm not sure I would vote to approve the eclipse.
Question on our pool, are we, how do handicap,
Patrons access to the
Yes.
facility. So to actually enter the pool, they don't go through, if they're in a wheelchair, they do not go through the restrooms because they can't navigate the turns. They will go through the front gate with the ramp, go through that way, and then come in through the back entrance that they would use the facilities.
so we can pretty well accommodate?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind
I'm
of.
surprised we haven't received it.
I know you do,
Okay, one more thing. Let me just add on about Camp Eagle. I've known the folks at Camp Eagle since they got started, and they're good folks. They do a good job, know what they're doing. So, you know, for other events along the way, I think they're good people. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
job well
Okay.
done.
We will move to the pavement management system.
The exciting part, right?
That's for like
Cute, yeah. Enough of the dry stuff. Let's move on to something a little more entertaining. Good job, Ashley. That was a very well presentation. Now we are going to talk about pavement management, which is doesn't have near as many pretty pictures. We're going to talk about where we've come from, the pavement methods that we're using right now, and then also the budget of where we're going and how we anticipate getting there. As you know, we are under contract with Fugro and Associates, or just Swain 3S Engineering, who has hired Fugro and Associates to do the evaluation of the streets for us. And so we'll be getting that back towards the end of the summer. But I wanted to come today and give you all an update of what we've been working on, how we've gotten where we are today. So the key elements to the pavement management is to use the right management treatment at the right pavement at the right time. And that really is what we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes to an hour or something, is how do we get onto that? How do we use it? What's the best method? Street repairs are similar to home repair. You may be mowing your yard. If you don't do it for a long time, you are going to have a lot to do. The city hasn't done it in the past, very minimal, and we are in that place where we have a lot to do right now. So we've looked at, back in 2000, that'll be later on in the presentation. The biggest enemy of our streets is water. It's no coincidence that you'll see most of these pavement methods that they're using have the word seal in them. Crack seal, slurry seal, chip seal. It's all trying to seal out the water. So as the City of Kerrville uses our streets as drainage ways, they are causing significant damage to the streets. The diverting the drainage way away from the street will be very important to use underground drainage systems or off-channel drainage systems. We're doing a drainage master plan right now. We anticipate having that back by the end of the summer as well. And that will come up with some projects for us to get some of the major areas of flooding out of the street. Collecting consistent, complete, and accurate pavement data, monitoring networks, and evaluating deterioration and benefits of the treatment, and predicting future costs of the street repairs is also going to be key elements in our report. In 2016, the city made a conscious effort to change off of the manual method of evaluating the streets, where we have individuals go out and look at the streets and try to assess which one was the worst street in town. We hired Fugro and Associates to drive the streets with their van. This van actually used ground penetrating radar and had a gyroscope in it. Also took pictures of it and outlined the cracks that were in the streets, and we're able to assess them on an engineering level as to which one is the worst street. Some of the components they used to look at were the potholes, block seal, block cracking, asphalt bleeding, alligator cracking, surface rattling, edge cracking, and then also rutting was a big important of what they were looking at in that original study. That study produced a pavement management system that we use today. We've learned a lot operating that pavement management system for the last 4 years. We think that we have found some efficiencies outside of that plan that we're going to be able to incorporate in the new plan. Some of those efficiencies when we go back in, when we do this restudy, we're actually going to make sure it's calibrated right. They made some assumptions in there of how fast our streets are failing. And we want to make sure that those assumptions are right. Is the street really going to last 20 years, 15 years? Are these repair methods going to last the period of time that they're having? So we're going to be able to reassess that again and check our benchmarks for that. We'll be able to identify new pavement techniques, maybe including chip seal. Last time we didn't use chip seal. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. And combining multiple street segments and to minimize construction costs. Part of the plan was to evaluate each street on a block-to-block analysis. So we looked at a segment of, if not, then you double count the intersections. And so you look from the throat of the intersection to the throat of the intersection. So you don't double count the intersection. What that did is it made it for a whole lot of segments of streets in town. And so you were able to look at that, a very granular look at the street, and say this is the worst street in town, and the next one is 2 miles away, and the one after that's another mile away from that. It made working with our contractors very difficult, because they're always mobilizing from one section of street to the next section of street, and they're not contiguous. So we would like to clean that up, and we are going to clean that up in this next study and get that all for one section of street, and hopefully be able to find some efficiencies in the length and not having them move all over town. Another thing that we learned is the next bullet point there is this annual cycle. So right now we're using 4 different methods of repairing the streets. We use crack seal, slurry seal, full depth reconstruction, and then also mill and overlay. We're doing all 4 of those every year. We're thinking right now the best way to do that is consolidate all of the slurry seal into 1 year and do a lot larger slurry seal project or a crack seal or whatever. And that way you can attract bigger contractors, hopefully keeping our costs down and covering a little more of the street as well. We also won't have as much soft costs from engineering department and public works of administering those contracts with 4 different contractors. We think we'll save a lot of money on engineering and so on by doing that. So those are some of the lessons learned from the first evaluation. We'll reevaluate the budget and the repair techniques and prioritizing in the streets. Incorporate our current knowledge of internal paving abilities. You'll see in this plan in the next few slides that we were a little aggressive on how much reconstruction we thought we were going to be able to do. Everything else, the other 3 methods, we're pretty close. We're getting them done. The full depth reconstruction is taking a lot more time than we anticipated. And then digitizing our streets and sidewalk inventory. In this plan, one of the reasons we did not use chip seal last time is that we didn't have where the curbs were and where the sidewalks were and where all the signage was. So in the current plan, we will have that. It'll be a function of the new plan as well. No problem? No question there? Okay, so now we'll talk about pavement itself. So the pavement looks kind of like a layer cake. There's multiple layers. The first one on the very bottom down there is the subgrade. That's just the existing material. We roll it and compact it. Sometimes we'll lime stabilize it depending on what the subgrade is. And then we bring in the next layer, which can be either black base or limestone. We've moved away from limestone base because it was taking so long to roll it in. You have to, there's a component, you have to get it wet. You bring it in 4 to 6 inch lifts, and then you wet it, and then compact it, and you bring in another lift and do the same. The black base, and if it rains on it, you need to pull all that out and redo it again. The black base does not have that. We're able to roll in the black base almost, and then if it rains on it or not, we can pave right over the top of it. So above the, what they call flex base or limestone base, you put a binder layer, which is some emulsion, then you put a surface course. Most of our surface course is about 2 inch that we're replacing right now, and we're replacing streets that have anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches. They didn't use very much, and not all of them have very much base on them. The old streets typically did not use flex base around here. They used river gravel and sand. That was convenient, and that's what they used. So that's the cross section of the streets.
What's the best base?
Depends on the application. Black base is going to be the easiest to install. It's going to last the longest, and when you mill it out, you can reuse it all. So I would say black base is probably the best. But the problem is you can typically buy that from a plant, and it's quite a bit more expensive than flex base. But in my opinion, it would be black base, and then flex base or limestone, same thing, and then your river gravel, and then no base.
Okay, just one thing. Given the problems with limestone base, it takes the time it does to put it in, and then it rains, you got to take it out and put it back in. Does that get you up to price-wise, the black base?
Yes, actually just the extra labor of putting it in, and how much longer it takes to put it in and water it in, how long the people are off the street. It's still cheaper to put in limestone base, but the efficiency is there. We're able to get a lot more streets done using the black base, and we're able to utilize our staff better. So
long term, it's actually cheaper to use limestone? It sounds like maybe not, right?
We use limestone on Singing Wind, but the projects that we're doing, since they're short section, we use black base. And we've covered a lot more ground using black base than what we did when we were using limestone. There again, that rain, you have to pull it all out, but it gets what's called contaminated. It gets dirt on the top of it, and the emulsion won't stick to it. And the emulsion is what holds the base to the pavement. And so if you don't get that good binder in there, then you have trouble with that till the next time you do it. So we have retooled a little bit, and we're using black base on last year was our first year to really start using a lot of black base, and it has proven to be super beneficial to us. The next slide shows the cost efficiencies of maintenance. There again, trying to use the right method at the right time. So when you build a street, the lifestyle of the street or lifetime of the street is that red line on the graph. It starts out in a very good condition on the far left side, and then it deteriorates somewhat slowly, and then it follows a pretty good curve down, and then it gets to a point where some of our streets are down at the reconstruction area, where it kind of bottoms out, if you will, and just kind of stays in that condition for a long time. The street's already failed, but we're still using it. And those are the type of methods that we would use in those different time scenarios. First thing we do is crack seal. If the street's in fairly good condition, we'll crack seal it. And if it needs a little bit more attention, we'll crack seal it and slurry seal it. And then as it deteriorates a little bit more, we may be doing some edge mill and overlay on the edges, and then the total full depth reconstruction. So those are the 4 methods that we're using right now.
Are both crack seal and slurry seal cold?
Yes, the crack seal is hot, the one we use. You can get either one, but it's the big pot that you see out there with the steam blowing out of it, and they got a blower that blows the crack out, and then they put the hot mix into the hot crack seal into the crack.
We do those at a little different time of year. A lot of times the crack seal we're doing during the winter time frame. It's the maximum crack size, and so we can make sure that the expansion is
Okay. But when cities do seal coat, that will eliminate slurry seal and crack seal.
The seal coat is the same thing as chip seal. Chip seal has about 4 different names because it is that popular, but yes, sir. And we'll talk through each one of them here. The next slide is the tract seal. It reduces the radiation. Here again, the whole, in general, what we're trying to do is prevent water from getting through the surface course into the subgrade. Because as that water gets in there, as we just talked about earlier, especially if you don't have any base, it's going to start causing the road to flex, or to, as it absorbs water, it expands, and as it shrinks, it contracts. And that causes more cracking in your surface course, which causes more water in, and then it causes it to fail faster. It also gets those what we call alligator cracking, where it's the little blocks there where it kind of looks like alligator skin, and at that point your road's pretty well gone. You just got to pull that out and start it again. So what we're trying to do by all these methods is really keep the water out of the subgrade, or out of the base layer. So crack seal is something we're using right now. It has a life cycle of about 2 to 4 years. I can read through these each individually if you'd like, but on a high level, it's got about 2 to 4 life cycle. Maintenance cost is about $1.80 a yard. We've done about 43 lane miles of that so far since 2016. This is obviously the cheapest method that we use, and we've covered the most lanes with it. It's probably one of the most unappealing to the public because they look like little snakes or whatever they want to call them on the roads everywhere. And so you'll see these on the street. You'll see this quite a bit, and you'll actually see it bleed through on some of the slurry seals as well. After we slurry seal over the top of it, you'll see little darker lines. Has that crack seal. The slurry seal just doesn't penetrate into the apparent concrete or the apparent asphalt as well. It sits up on top of this seal. So
By far one of the most cost-effective methods for us to keep water from penetrating and keeping that PCI high.
Is this something our staff can do, or we have another staff do this?
We contract this work out.
Is there some way we can do this in-house?
It's time. It's the time and the labor. So we've shifted our resources to being able to get out there during paving season and really maximizing that. And we're also doing a lot of prep work during this time in advance of those other contracts.
Paving season is spring, summer?
Well, spring
right
and
now,
summer.
yeah, we've started, and we'll carry on until it gets too cold, where it's normally in the 50s. The nights in the 50s or something, it's getting too cold to pave. Slurry seal is the next method. It's a thin layer treatment that we put down. It actually comes out of a truck. Looks very similar to asphalt, but it's not. It's probably less than ½ inch thick, maybe ¼ inch thick. And they put it down. The rock is mixed with an emulsion, and it comes on very smooth finish, and it binds to the surface. It has a lifespan of about 1 to 5 years. And our contract cost for it is $4.33 a yard. So far we've done 26 miles of it in the city, and that is the contractor does that. We go out, our street department goes out and preps the roads, same as they do with slurry seal. We'll go out and fix the potholes. We'll go out and do point repairs on the roads if there's low spots in them or bad spots in the road that the slurry seal won't fix. It really doesn't fix anything. It just puts a nice smooth finish over the top. So we have to go in and do all that prep work first. Now we don't have the equipment to do the slurry seal or the manpower. Our street department, or the equipment that the city bought for the street department was all the full depth reconstruction equipment, and then also the milling over. The hardest stuff or the most intensified use of equipment that we have. And so that's what we've been using. And it's the longest process. Asphalt overlay. This asphalt overlay is going to be very similar to the next slide. Matter of fact, I'll talk about them both at the same time. Mill and overlay. Asphalt overlay is the same thing, other than it does not come next to a curb. And so all you do is go over there and put on another 1.5 to 2 inches of overlay onto your street. The problem with that on the city street is all of the ADA ramps and things, your street section has a bump in it now where it's coming off of the ramp or into the gutter. Now you have a thickness there of 1.5 or 2 inches of asphalt. And so that's where we come in with the milling machine, which is the mill and overlay, and we mill that down so when we're done paving, everything lines up along the edges again. The middle of the road is a little bit higher, but the curb lines and the ADA ramps and everything are able to match that away. Commonly done in 2-inch lifts. Now, life cycle of this is much better, 8 to 15 years, and the cost is $8 is the material cost, and the contractor cost to put it down is about $18 per yard.
So Stuart, on the asphalt overlay, you showed no miles. So all of the stuff that we've done has been mill and overlay.
Yes, sir, in the street. Yes, sir. And mill and overlay is the next slide. It lasts very similar to to just the overlay. Actually, that's a little bit better because it has curbs on both sides, and asphalt likes to move around, and so it likes that confining layer of the concrete on both sides, so the car's not pushing and letting it heave and move around. As you can tell, it's all, like I said, it's like a cake, and it will move and can cause issues along the side. It is a little bit more expensive to put in because you are doing that milling aspect of it and digging some of it out on each side. So it's about $20 a yard for a contractor to put it on, or $8.85 for the materials for us to do it. We have done quite a bit of this. This is one thing our street department does turnkey. We will go out and mill and overlay streets. So far we've done about 10.48 lane miles since 2016. Full depth reconstruction is going in once we've fallen off that life cycle of this, off the life cycle of the street, or the life of the pavement, it's so far gone, there's nothing really left to do. There's big potholes in it. There's rutting. Rutting is where the tire path wears down and pushes into the pavement, and you have a hump where the middle of the car is, and then where the tire path is on both sides is a lot lower. Once that starts to happen, there's not a whole lot to do but to dig it out and replace the base under it and go back with a full depth reconstruction. This is something else our street department does. This is the most time consuming method that we use, but it also has the longest repair life to it. So it is a full depth reconstruction. We have a lot of streets that need it. It cost us about $50 a yard to have a contractor do it. Our material cost is about $15.40 a yard. I do not have a number. I did not put a number for our labor or anything in there, but that just kind of gives a contrast from what we would pay for it to what we charge, or what our costs are in-house for the material.
Did you say we're contracting this, or we do it in-house?
We contract, this is the main one that we do in-house, but we've also contracted it out. Singing Wind is an example of that. This last year we contracted out Singing Wind, and that actually $50 a yard is Singing Wind's contract number. So we've done 6.28 lane miles of that so far.
But this is one we are set up to actually do in-house.
Yes, sir.
And if we did it in-house, do we have a ballpark of, of what the labor would be? Maybe have an idea? I mean, if we're set up to do it, we're essentially staffing to do it, so what would our budget cost be for us doing it? Do we know?
I don't have a turnkey, including all the labor and every component of it, because our street department does a lot of other things as well. And so we'd have to go back in and kind of retool for that, figure out how many hours are we spending just on the asphalt work. Because they're fixing signs and they're trimming trees and brush and stuff. And so we got to dial into that number and find out exactly. But it's significantly less than what we're paying that contractor.
And it's about balance, right? And so it's, are they doing full depth reconstruction, or are they doing mill and overlay? It's kind of where we're shifting them to kind of maximize the lane miles that we can go feel like we can go attack.
Yeah, I get that, but part of our streets budget is to pay for labor. And so if we're itemizing labor to be doing this work, it would be good to know in the apples to apples comparison, where's our budget dollars going? So as you get down to making decisions on it, it'd be nice to have some analysis of that.
I think at this point what we're saying is that it doesn't make sense for us to add on staff, because then it becomes more expensive than just contracting. But it's something that we continue to look at to make sure that it is a good comparison, and that we use the money as best we can.
But, and I get that, that makes perfect sense. I'm not suggesting we add staff. What I'm asking is, we've got staff that were hired to do essentially this work. So we're not talking about adding them, we're just talking about the value on the work that they're doing.
Well, my question would be, would we have enough staff to take care of everything that needed to be taken care of, in addition to everything else they have to do?
We don't, and that's the issue. But at some point, we might have to be asking ourselves,
Would that be the best?
exactly.
And we'll talk more about that as we move on. We'll see that this full depth reconstruction is causing there's a big demand of our time.
How long does, if you do a street with where you full reconstruction, a week?
Well, no, it's a multi-month process.
Oh, really?
As you recall from Singing Winds, that was probably about, what, 2 to 3 months? It took us most of the summer last year.
Yeah,
but
It's a long, yeah.
so these are the ones that you have
That
to,
was a big stretch, you're right. Yeah, it depends on the scale of the project, how wide it is, how traveled it is, if we're having to, still accommodate traffic on half of it and then go do the other half. I mean, there's a lot of variability to it, but it can definitely be a multi-month process.
especially if it gets rained on and you're using that limestone base, you get it all ready, and then all of a sudden you get a little shower now where you get to rip that surface course off and do it again. And so, Singing Wind, we had to do it in 3 phases because it's 3 lanes of traffic. And so we milled out one piece, or actually the contractor did that. They milled out 1 lane, the whole width, and they come back in, put the base in, and they paved it. They moved over, did the next one. So it was it's a big ordeal. And we have to get all the utilities out of the way. City of Kerrville has our water and sewer running in the street. Gas is typically the hardest one because they've been very, very deep. And so as we notify those companies and say, hey, we're going to pave this street, you'll need to lower everything and make sure you're out of the way. Cape Up has some stuff in the street as well. So it's a big process.
It is.
It's not.
I think I may have solved the whole deal.
Oh.
I thought the city had 74 miles of streets. And looking at your figures on what you've already done, it comes to 75.4 or 5.
Does this looks like it's done. The day off?
Looks like it's done.
Yeah, there's about 170 miles of streets out there.
170, oh, okay.
I think it's important to note too, even on these contracts that we have going out, the Streets Department does an incredible job in preparing those for the contractor so we can minimize the contractor cost as far as being able to come in, get the work done, and get out. So there's a lot of preparation work and getting it to the point where it can actually be slurry sealed or it can be overlaid that our guys are having to do internally to get it ready to go.
And when we contract out this stuff, we have machinery that we couldn't do this with, but we're not using it.
Oh no, we're using it. We're using it through our whole paving season. And so our guys are using our equipment the whole paving season. There's just more work than what we can get done.
I mean, the equipment that's used for paving reconstruction is not specific to that. It's used for other things.
Some of it is. Some of it's specific to it. There's 2. We have 2 loaders. One we mill up we put a grinder on there. We mill out the old one. And while that loader's grinding it up, the other loader's actually scooping it up and hauling it off with all the dump trucks. Then we come back in. The dump trucks are bringing the new base in. We have some rollers that will roll that down.
The contractors doing it. Are we using that equipment?
Yes. Yeah, we're doing it on other streets. Yeah.
We have multiple crews that are working different projects.
Yeah, we're all paving season. We are paving. We're not paving every day, but when we're not, we're preparing to pave, or we're milling out, or we're putting base back in. We don't pave every day. We may pave once a week. But we're in that process somewhere along the way. Okay, the next one is chip seal. Chip seal. This is what the county uses out on kind of rural sections of streets. It also is difficult to use on streets that have curbs and gutters because it's actually building up the street. It builds it up probably a half to 3/4 of an inch. What it does is you go down, you put a layer of tar down or emulsion down, and then you shoot a shot of rock over the top of it. And the rock is to keep the tires up out of the tar. The tar or the emulsion is what's sealing the street. And that's falling into all those little cracks, and that's why it gets such good coverage. It's the whole street covered. The city did not include this in the original Fugro plan as a repair method because of the tar gets on people's feet, gets on their animals, and the chips come out and they will ding people's cars and potentially break windows. And so it does have some drawbacks. You can see there it has a decent lifespan. This is a TxDOT number that we pulled up. It's 6 to 10 years, and TxDOT right now is paying about $2.30 a yard to have that put down. This is what you'll see. They did the loop a couple years ago. This is their bread and butter. This is what TxDOT typically does on most of their roads out on the interstate. So
is this compared to a slurry seal, what we're doing?
it does. That's the closest thing to compare it to.
It's half the cost and it lasts twice as long.
Yes, sir.
It's more about the roadway type, right? So it's about rural sections versus curb and gutter sections. And so that's the difference between most of the county roads and TxDOT roads versus the ones that are interior to the city, where some of these other methods are maybe a little bit more appropriate. But that's the good thing about our new analysis, is that because we're now going beyond just the pavement width, and we're actually looking at the curbs and the sidewalks as well, we'll have a better idea of how many lane miles we have that are more rural in nature, because we have absorbed some of those from the county areas in the past, and how many are actual curb and gutter. And so we're going to put that into the full analysis.
Well, talk to us at this point, I guess, about seal coat.
Seal coat and chip seal are the same. One is the same.
And don't many cities use seal coat as a standard, like you lay your road down, and then a couple years later you lay down a seal coat, and then that's your maintenance thing. It eliminates the tract seal and the slurry seal as part of your maintenance process, and you get a longer life. And there's safety aspects to chip seal or seal coat that come into play as well. So where are we in looking at those? If they long-term create a maintenance benefit, cost and saving, or safety, where are we on looking at that?
When you say safety, elaborate on that.
Well, for one, it's more reflective, and then there's also apparently some skid. It had skid eliminating or minimizing skid of a vehicle, so you got a better braking friction situation. But the other is at nighttime, it's more reflective, and when it's water, it's less kind of invisible, if you will. When there's water on asphalt pavement, you kind of lose the vision of the street. But then the obvious cost benefits. I mean, what we're doing is crack sealing and slurry seal. You add them together, and that's more than the chip seal.
So it's not uncommon for TxDOT to put crack seal down under the chip seal. They usually do it kind of what we're doing now, where we'll crack seal a street, and then they'll come back a few years later and slurry seal chip seal over the top of it. So the reason the council didn't want to do it for the previous plan was just what we talked about, that it gets tars on people's feet, on their animals. It gets tar on their cars. The chips come loose and ding windows and flake paint. There is a higher noise that's associated with driving on. If you're driving down the interstate, you'll hear they got bigger rock. You can try to address that with smaller rock. Then you lose some of those benefits that you were talking about. So it's kind of a balancing act as to what we want to do and where we need to do it. The biggest piece is that we can't have something that's going to cause they didn't want to have something that would cause the street section to be raised. So it affected all the 80 ramps and all the curb and gutter and things like that.
Address that with mill overlay, like you discussed it earlier.
You can, that's just a different method. If you do a mill, then you're milling it down typically more than what this is going to fill back in. I guess you could mill, I have to ask Joel, what's the minimum depth that we can mill? But usually you want to take out a little bit of material, so this will have a place to bind to it and hold in there without it getting all the abrasion that's on the side of the roads.
Right, so what I'm talking about is less about fixing or band-aiding. It's anytime we do a pavement reconstruction, if we knew that part of our plan was to do we're going to move towards essentially pavement and whatever you call it, seal coat in a couple of years, then we're designing our streets to where the leveling you're talking about wouldn't be that way. So if we're going to do any pavement, the thought would be, if we're gonna do any pavement reconstruction, we're actually gonna take it down to where it needs to be so that it comes up to where the curves are at the end of the day, because over time, the way these cities are doing it is they're doing the seal coats every 5, 6, 7 years. And so you're eliminating all these other Band-Aid fixes, and your long-term solution is that. And you lose you run the benefit of it is it's a maintenance thing that you can budget for. You aren't having to fix things, and long-term it's a whole lot cheaper. So it's not so much fixing what we've got problem with, but implementing a long-term maintenance that actually becomes more efficient over time. Because we have an opportunity to do that. We're reviewing our process right now.
Sure.
Right? So.
You may not have this answer today, but I just thought of this. I'd like to see, from going from slurry seal to chip seal, with the cost and time savings, how much more streets can we actually get done? How much more, having more linear miles or whatever.
We can do that, but I think what we're saying is that when you do chip seal in a neighborhood, and I've done it before, you get incredible complaints from neighbors about rocks in their yard, about rocks accumulated in the gutters, about
Something we have to decide, because I'm getting complaints right now that most of the streets are pathetic, and I'm kind of tired of hearing that. If we have an option where we can do something about it or get more done, I'm not going to.
Well, I think what we're saying is that we've got some opportunities to use it. We think, especially as we identify the rural sections that we have that are not curb and gutter, and start looking at using it there, and see how that goes.
Maybe like 30 miles an hour or less, speed limit wise.
Probably.
I think the vast majority of those sections, they were areas that were in the county that became part of the city, but they still have a rural section, but I think most of them are still neighborhoods that have lower speed limits.
Okay. I'd like to see us looking at chips a little more.
Yeah, it's part of the analysis we'll be bringing back this summer.
Which is the reason you just said, which is we're getting complaints now, and if we take a long time to get to these things, those complaints are going to stay. My guess is we get less complaints if the streets are fixed, and every once in a while somebody gets a chip. We're probably going to get less complaints about that. And again, I mean, I hate to bring up Boston, they do this, and where I grew up, we did this in neighborhood streets. We didn't have that issue of rocks coming up.
So we'll be
rubber in them too, right? Don't they use a rubber instead of rocks? I mean, isn't there other material it's a rubberized something? I don't know what the cost is, but they do other things besides rocks. But anyways.
Okay. Fredericksburg is one of them too, so if anybody wants to drive, most of their streets but they use gigantic rock, and they do get complaints about that as well over there. So why use pavement management program? Proper pavement management saves money, prevents maintenance of long-term life, or preserves maintenance of long-term life, avoid deterioration sections that require expensive rehabilitation and full construction. So you'll see on the right-hand side there, that's that same life cycle thing. You can see how long is it going to take for a street to deteriorate. So the bottom axis is the time, and then your PCI rating is on the left-hand side there. And what repair do you need to do? Is it a tract seal? Is it a chip seal, slurry seal? If you catch it in a fair condition, where we say $1 for rehab here on the life cycle, you're actually going to cause the life of that street to kind of spike up at that point. And it's going to go all the way back up to a satisfactory, maybe the bottom of the hood, and then it's going to start deteriorating again. But if you don't do anything, it's going to continue to deteriorate at its original level, and it's going to come down in here to this poor, very poor, or severe or failed even. That's going to cost you anywhere from $4 to $5, on up to $8 if it gets all the way down and fail to make that same repair. So this graph is trying to depict the right repair on some of these streets. Even if we do a full depth reconstruction, We probably shouldn't just walk away from them and say, we're gonna wait until they start to fail before we do anything. There's some maintenance that needs to go on there as well, just to kind of keep them in a good working order. On the next slide is the budget analysis. This comes out of the Fugro plan, the original plan. They were trying to do some projections for us as to how our streets how the PCI would deteriorate over time, or how we could make it better depending on how much money we were going to put towards the streets. Each one of those lines is a different funding level for a 5-year plan, and it ends with the PCI index of trying to get to that 70 is where council wanted to be in 5 years. And so they ended at the $1.5 million number. This is a linear look at it. The city chose to do $1 million the first year, maybe 2, and then it's been growing up ever since then. And so this graph doesn't really work, but this kind of gives you an idea of a funding source, and how if you do steady funding at these lower rates, that you're still losing ground as that.
Question on this one, what's this slurry seal?
This is all of them, whatever method you want to use.
Okay.
We used all 4 of those methods in this particular scenario.
I wonder if we could get something where this is just slurry, if we could get one with chip seal also involved.
So when we come back,
I would just like to see the comparison.
so when we come back this summer, that'll have, it'll be a multi-pronged attack, but it will have an analysis that will show kind of where the equilibrium lies with multifaceted techniques.
And this is based on budgeting, so of the budgets, how much has actually been spent and put in play? So you get to that.
Okay, the next slide, we'll see the pavement budget. Now this number here, this $1.6 million, actually includes drainage and paving. I looked at the drainage piece of our budget, and there's only about $50,000 adds to this number, so I went ahead and put them all together. Within the street department budget, does not include salaries or anything. This is kind of a material type cost. This is the money that we use for the crack seal, the slurry seal, paving materials, striping, if we're going to do any striping out in the street, repairing an intersection, drainage work. These are the funds that we would use for that, even some engineering costs. And we've done some traffic analysis. I think y'all have seen those on some different areas in town. This is where this is the line item that gets used from. Okay.
Is that supposed to be the number that I was asking?
We're not there anymore.
Okay, all right.
Okay. On the next slide, we talk about pavement maintenance. This kind of breaks all the presentation down onto one page here, kind of cleans it up a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to compare lifespans of the different pavement types on the far right-hand side, life expectancies, and then the cost per lane mile of those methods. Who's doing the work, the responsibility of it there, if it's the city's preparation, and then the contractor comes in. You'll see in the kind of the lighter colored gray is the repair. The city's doing all the preparation work, and the contractor comes in and actually does the repair method. The reconstruction at the bottom is what the city does. We do that with no contractor's help, unless it's a big project like Singing Wind, and then we have the contractor come in and do the whole thing for us. So,
And those last two, the cost per lane mile, it doesn't appear to represent the material cost included. So is that by design, or is that a mistake? Are those total cost per lane mile? Are those just supposed to be the contractor cost, or?
yeah, those are the contractor costs.
No, do you know what I'm saying? See, 140,000 is 7,000. That's actually contractor cost per lane mile. It doesn't include, that 140,000 number doesn't include the material cost.
That's what I was trying to compare, is that if we go out for services, how much is it going to be?
So if it's a contractor, it's 20, and that includes material?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's what I was asking.
And 50, the pavement reconstruction up there, that like I said earlier, that's the actual cost of Singing Wind.
Okay, and that would include all materials in that project?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, so what have we done so far in the pavement system? Since for slurry seal in 2016, 17, and 18, we've done 43 miles of slurry seal. Crack seal, we've done 26 miles. Mill and overlay 10 miles, and then full depth reconstruction we've done 6.28 miles.
Stuart, I think those top two, I think the typos are actually flipped, right? I think crack seal is actually the 43 lane miles.
Yes, but I have the crack seal in the wrong column there. It's under task.
It's just top two. Yes, sir. Crack seal is 43.02 lane miles, and slurry seal is 26.02.
There's, you don't have those. I mean, it is a simple map showing the areas that have been addressed already. I'm kind of new for y'all city council, I like to see that.
And of those slurry seal and crack seal, the street department is still responsible for fixing those potholes, sweeping, leveling up, repairing patches, trimming trees, getting everything ready for the contractor to come in and do their work. So the list of streets are next, and I'll go through these pretty fast. I'll try to keep us on a schedule here. Crack seal, year 4, year 3 was just completed there, and so we're looking at doing year 4. We're either going to do crack seal, like EA said earlier this morning. We do that in the wintertime when the cracks are open as wide as they can be, so we can fill them up easier. And so depending on what council's guidance is after the next plan is back, we'll either do year 4 or we'll do year 1 of the new plan. So maintenance schedule for slurry, that's what we're going to be working on this year. The new plan won't be done in time to incorporate that, and we needed to have work to do this year, and so we're following the old Fugro plan for 1 more year for slurry seal and mill and overlay, which is the next slide. And then on the following slide is the pavement reconstruction. You can see that particular line, we were way overestimating how much we were going to be able to do. We still have streets from year 1 that have not been completed yet. And we've worked some streets in that are in year 2, but we're still working on year 1 to get those done. We're significantly, that's a significant amount of work to do for each one of those, and we haven't been able to keep up with the pace that they have set there. Now recently, Westminster has been questioned. You can see it is in year 3 and in year 4 there, and so it's on the list, but hasn't been completed yet.
And that's just because staffing, we just don't have enough staff, or is there other things getting in the way of these?
So there's a lot, the paving season, the way the streets are laid out, where we're doing short sections at each time, that's difficult to manage. Also the other work that the street department does, and then the limitation of how much equipment we have and manpower as well.
Go ahead, I've got a comment to make. Go ahead.
Okay. On the next slide, you'll be able to see their predictions. Now, this is an interesting slide. This is the slide that shows the repair method, or excuse me, not the method, but what the condition of the street, and then overall citywide, what streets are in this very good condition, good, satisfactory, fair, poor, very poor, and then failed. And so what we were trying to do, looking at a $1 million a year budget, if the city spent $1 million a year on our streets, would we spend them on the failed streets? Would we spend it on the kind of medium grade streets, or would we spend it on the very good streets? At that time, council said, well, we want to touch all of them a little bit. We want to do a little bit to everything. We don't want the failed streets to really come up, but we don't want our good streets to deteriorate real fast. And so they allocated some monies for each one of those repair methods, and that's what we did with those 4 methods that we just talked about. And so as we grow that over the next 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, you can see that our good streets were growing, and our very good streets are growing. Some of the fair had gotten smaller, and the satisfactory has gotten a little bit smaller, but unfortunately some of the failed streets are growing as well. So the failed streets are the ones that are really expensive to fix, and they take a really long time to do it. And so we knew that was growing. The only true answer to that is a large large-scale expenditure to kind of catch up with some of those things, because they're just,
Bond election comes in. So this is why we're looking at a bond election to try to play some catch up on, and then contract it out so that we can get it.
Do you have an example of a failed street?
so the previous,
One off.
Top of your head.
so the previous one is a pavement, all of those full-depth reconstruction streets, there's a whole, I don't know what page it is. On mine it's 21. but I don't know.
Yeah, it's that 2019 maintenance
Okay.
schedule, pavement reconstruction, basically all of those, year 1 through 4 are failed streets.
So this is where I should have waited for, but when you look into the bond election to fund fixing these failed streets, which I imagine is going to be a large portion of reconstruction, right? Is consider at that moment to see if this method of maintenance is better or worse than shifting to reconstruction and seal coat in a more proactive approach. Where does that put you over long term? Because if what we do is we repair all these failed streets, we end up in the same boat somewhere down the line if we just keep going with this maintenance plan. The failed may grow. So anyways.
That's right, it's holistically looking at the whole scale of your street inventory, right? They're all in different levels of
Right.
condition, and so some need a little bit of maintenance, some need full reconstruction, and so yeah, it's that whole mix of how do you triage and move forward with a plan.
Right, and so what I'm suggesting to you is you get to triage less if you possibly look at a different sort of maintenance methods. We've got 4 choices of maintenance methods, basically. And we might look at a alternate method and eliminate, because the way we're doing it now is creating a growing failed street count. And so we want, obviously, to not do that, right? So I'm just, like I say, suggesting looking at it, and that's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to maximize resources to create a comprehensive plan, no doubt about it, but it's going to take some policy direction from the council to do that.
The good streets, the very good streets, apparently were done well enough when they were done that they're holding.
Well, so there's, anytime you do a treatment to a street within their plan, it gets pushed up to a PCI of 100. And so that every time we've done the crack seal and the slurry seal over them, those streets get kicked up to 100. But you saw earlier that their life expectancy of those repair methods are shorter. And so, you know, we are being able to push our PCI up by doing that, but we're going to have to continue to do that to keep them up there. And then, as you can tell, this assumption, this red line down here was an assumption that we actually were able to do all of these streets too. So the red line's growing a little faster than what we're showing here. So just know that we'll be seeing that in the new plan.
The exciting thing about the new plan is really getting to a point where we're able to evaluate what these methods over the last 4 or 5 years are doing from a condition standpoint. Also, as Stuart mentioned earlier, what is that, we've got a better baseline now of knowing what the condition failure rate is over that 4-year time span. And so then really equalizing or finding equilibrium on the maintenance side, but then also really better understanding on the full reconstruction, what it's going to take from a catch-up standpoint. Because otherwise you'll never really get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there on an increase on the average, but we'll never really catch up on the reconstruction
It's kind of
side.
like bailing out a boat with a tablespoon. It's kind of
Yeah. Well made.
bigger than a tablespoon, but we're losing the battle doing what we're doing right now.
Well, the overall inventory is increasing, right? But on the bottom level, the failed streets is not necessarily catching up. That's right.
Okay. So the next step on the last slide there, current street division staffing levels are unable to fully utilize all the associated street repair funding on the internal staff. So we have more money every year than what we can spend on the streets. It's not a whole lot more since we've been using black base, but we're actually done a whole lot more full depth reconstruction last year than what we did the previous year. But we do use that money, and we're able to pull it out of their budget. And once we have enough money to fund a project, we do a singing wind, or we do something like that. Still using it for street repair. It's just more than what our staff spends in an ongoing year. In order to maximize street repairs during the limited time paving season, the city has also hired contractors to conduct crack seal, slurry seal, and full depth reconstruction. That's just like the singing wind that we talked about. In the 2019 pavement management system update, we will provide compile a list of prioritized streets that are in high level need of repair. We anticipate having the analysis done by early summer.
So can you go ahead and go to the slide after questions, Bill, and that gives the Councilman Williams questions.
Okay, so here we have a look at our kind of what was budgeted for each one of these years, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. The red line is what our budget was. City expenditures is the blue line, and then the contract expenditures is the green line. So if you'll look at, we'll say 16, this was the first year that we implemented it. Our budget was significantly higher than what our expenditures were. And so we used some of that money. All of the delta of this money was put into an account which we were able to do singing wind with. And it was tell me what the number was, $800,000 for singing wind?
Yeah,
$800,000. So all of this money was spent on streets. It just wasn't spent out of our operating budget. Same thing with 2017 and 18. Contract expenditures were crack seal, slurry seal, intersection repair, traffic studies, things of that nature were what we would consider contract work.
And you'll see the 19, the reason there's just a small piece on 19 so far is we're just now entering paving season. So obviously that's ramping up. That number, or that bar on the bar graph is going to increase dramatically here.
Okay, for 2018, because it's split apart like that, is the green and blue,
If you stack those on top
are
of
they
each
the
other.
same in budget, or how much?
96%.
96?
Yes.
Which is what in dollars? What is that? One something?
Close to 1.5 million.
96%.
But
Stuart, I want to thank you for this analysis. This is good work and really interesting and breaks it down well. In my opinion, as we talked about this, I think you basically said we want to keep with some kind of a cafeteria approach of where we use this kind of paving or this kind of reconstruction in one area, this kind in another, and so we've got some options. But from what you've said, apparently you're continuing to hear from TxDOT. Your contractors are giving you info. Y'all are looking at research articles, and then looking at, okay, locally, what do we need to do? I would say, I hope we can accelerate this. Like George says, the main complaints I get are street complaints. And, as I look at it, citizens typically, they encounter the city through water, through streets, and through a sense of safety regarding fire and police. And so streets are big. And I think the other part of that is we've got a PR issue that we somehow need to communicate what's going on, what's planned, costs, and that the city is indeed concerned and moving ahead. Because some people think the city isn't. And I say, well, wait a minute. Look at what's already happening and this kind of thing. I don't think anything's going on. So I think addressing the PR part of this is critical.
So the way to boil all this down for me anyway, we started out in 2016, I think like $500,000. We're now up to 1.6 because of council action. We've got a slow start in spending that money. We're now starting to really spend that money, all of it, in each fiscal year. The problem is, regardless of what maintenance method you use, your worst streets are going to continue to climb because they're too far gone, regardless of what maintenance method it is, to be able to go in and use, whether it's a slurry seal or a crack seal or chip seal or whatever crack. It doesn't matter. you can't attack those streets that way. So what you have to do is you have to have infusion of cash to go back and tackle the toughest streets, because your maintenance methods will no longer work. It'll keep growing as the streets age. So that's why either sell COs or bond election, whatever the council decides, you've got to have some street work to be able to play catch up, because failed bond elections, not enough money in the maintenance budget prior to 16. That's why we are where we are. So we've got to play catch up.
Right, so that's boiling it down to, we have to play catch up. Everybody knows that. What parameters did council give you that put us in a situation where the path created, back in 2015 when you asked council whatever, if they'd answered differently, what could they have answered differently that would have got you to not have over time a rising failed street percentage?
So what we would have had.
Money is one, but what parameters did they put in that judged that? Like 70%, you threw out that number. What were they saying about 70% that we could say differently that says we're committing not just money, but we're committing to a goal, a benchmark? What are we trying to achieve? One should be that our failing street count doesn't grow. What money does it take to prevent that from happening?
I think it's two-pronged, right? So it's an increase of your average PCI or a maintenance of a certain policy level of PCI. So that was what was previously given.
Okay.
But it would be a secondary step of saying, we want all streets of a PCI below 10 or 15 or whatever it is reconstructed by X. And we're willing to go to the community and ask for an infusion of capital to go and have those contracted out and repaired.
Okay, so the PR question is, when we go and ask them for money, we need to be able to tell them that we're not just catching up, we're also setting up a process where we don't get in this position again. And so that once we catch up, we just took all their money and we fixed everything. Now, or fixed whatever portion we were going to fix. Now, what is our maintenance moving forward where we don't trend into this way again? Because it sounds like unless we change our path, our streets weren't caught up before, but we're trending backwards. So we need to not do that once we catch up. So it is a two-prong, and what do you need from council to say that's what we're doing? I mean, the amount of money is the catch-up money. What does council have to tell you so that our maintenance trend is not like this?
That's what the new plan's about. So that's why we're doing the new plan.
So the summer time frame, what we'll be coming to is to have that universe of what we feel like the reconstruction streets will be and what we think that estimated cost will be, and then also what we think the equilibrium amount for maintenance will be. So that will be the two policy directives that we're looking for from council this summer.
And as part of that plan, you're going to look at these cost-cutting maintenance options?
We're looking at all the maintenance techniques that we talked about today.
Because I'm not hearing that come back as a directive. It doesn't sound like that's what you guys are going to look at. We'd like
We
to.
just said, George, that was going to be something that we consider as far as the new maintenance method, as far as where it might be appropriate or not. And ultimately, the council will decide, yes, we think this, or no, we want you to do that. So we are considering it.
That's one part I'd like to see again.
I don't understand the tongues. I just asked a question. I'm
Not sure why you come back that way. We're not sure what you're talking about.
Vocal speaking.
Within the budget we have, how many linear miles can we do as far as seal versus crack seal, or chip seal, I'm sorry. Just flat across the board, not picking certain areas, just to see how far we can actually stretch that line. That'd be something I'd be curious to see.
I have just a curiosity question, and it doesn't really mean anything, but I'm just curious. Why back in 16 and 17, why was all the money not used? Was there a particular reason that?
So 16 was our first year. We were still trying to figure out how to operate and what to do, and we were outfitting our staff as to how to do the repair method. And also get some contractors, get some interested contractors, and it was our first year, and so it was a strong learning curve. And we've caught up to it now. We know what we're doing, and we're able to kind of retool the program to
It's all going to
function
streets.
for us.
That's what Stuart was saying.
those dollars went mostly towards reconstruction. Big chunk of it was single win.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you
Some good information.
for all of this.
Yeah, thanks. We look forward to your coming back to us.
Just kind of a random
It's very,
question.
very
Are we-
complicated.
Are we looking at any pervious pavers as far as our city streets or any other areas? I know we kind of do the parking, but do we actually do roadways?
No, not with pavers, no, sir, with it. They just don't hold up very well. I mean, you could do the cobblestones if you wanted to, but that's not, it's not cost effective. Cobblestone is very expensive, but the impervious stuff, I think actually you guys used a couple inner parks here or there, but not for streets, they just don't hold up.
All right, anything else? At 11:51, we are adjourned.